Tessa Aldridge stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, admiring the pristine landscape of her opulent suburban home. The morning sun cast a warm glow on her flawless complexion, accentuating her natural beauty. At 35, she possessed a timeless allure that turned heads wherever she went. "Good morning, Mrs. Aldridge," greeted Maria, the housekeeper, as she entered the living room. "Shall I prepare your usual breakfast?" Tessa turned, a radiant smile gracing her lips. "Yes, please, Maria. And could you bring me a mimosa as well? It's going to be a beautiful day, and I feel like celebrating." Maria nodded, her eyes briefly lingering on the dazzling diamond necklace adorning Tessa's neck. It was a stunning piece, one that Maria had never seen before, but she knew better than to ask questions. As Maria departed for the kitchen, Tessa's gaze drifted back to the expansive grounds, her mind wandering to the life of luxury she had grown accustomed to. Her husband, Griffin Aldridge, was a powerful and successful businessman, and his wealth afforded them a lifestyle most could only dream of. However, beneath the surface of opulence and privilege, a secret burned within Tessa, a desire for more than just material wealth. She craved attention, admiration, and the thrill of conquest. It was a hunger that her husband's frequent business trips and emotional distance could never satiate. "You're up early, darling," a deep voice resonated from behind her. Tessa turned, her eyes meeting those of Griffin, a man whose sharp features and piercing gaze commanded respect. "You know me, always eager to start the day," she replied, her tone laced with a hint of playfulness. Griffin's eyes narrowed slightly as he noticed the extravagant necklace adorning Tessa's neck. "That's a new piece," he remarked, his voice carrying a tinge of suspicion. Tessa's heart skipped a beat, but her expression remained composed. "Do you like it? I saw it in a boutique and couldn't resist treating myself," she lied smoothly, her lips curling into a coy smile. Griffin held her gaze for a moment before nodding curtly. "It suits you," he conceded, his tone guarded. As Griffin turned to leave, Tessa exhaled a silent breath of relief. Little did he know that the necklace was a gift from her secret lover, Julian Pierce, a charming and wealthy art dealer with whom she had been carrying on a torrid affair. Their trysts were shrouded in secrecy, taking place in high-end hotels and exotic locations, where Julian showered her with lavish gifts and attention. It was a dance of seduction and deceit, one that Tessa had become an expert at maintaining. Later that evening, Tessa hosted a lavish party at the Aldridge mansion, surrounded by her closest friends and acquaintances. As she mingled among the guests, her infectious charm and beauty captivated everyone in her presence. "Tessa, darling, that necklace is simply divine," gushed Samantha, one of Tessa's closest friends. "Griffin must have spared no expense." Tessa smiled knowingly, her fingers caressing the diamond pendant. "You know how much he loves to spoil me," she replied, subtly hinting at the necklace's true origin. Across the room, Lucas Bennett, Griffin's trusted assistant, observed the scene with a keen eye. He had noticed the extravagant gifts and the way Tessa interacted with some of the male guests, including Julian Pierce, who was in attendance. As the party wound down and the guests departed, Lucas approached Griffin, his expression solemn. "Sir, if I may, there's something I think you should be aware of," he began cautiously. Griffin's brow furrowed, his curiosity piqued. "What is it, Lucas?" Lucas hesitated for a moment before continuing. "I couldn't help but notice the way Mrs. Aldridge was behaving tonight, particularly with some of the gentlemen present. It seemed inappropriate, to say the least." Griffin's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. "Go on," he prompted, his tone clipped. Lucas recounted his observations, detailing the lavish gifts and the apparent familiarity between Tessa and Julian. As he spoke, Griffin's expression grew increasingly stern, his suspicions mounting. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Lucas," Griffin said, his voice low and controlled. "I'll handle it from here." As Lucas departed, Griffin's mind whirled with thoughts of betrayal and disbelief. The woman he had loved and trusted, the one he had provided with every luxury, seemed to be leading a double life right under his nose. With a steely resolve, Griffin vowed to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The game of deception was about to come to a screeching halt, and he intended to be the one holding all the cards. The weight of Lucas's revelations hung heavy in the air, and Griffin felt a storm of emotions brewing within him. Anger, betrayal, and disbelief coursed through his veins, threatening to consume him. How could Tessa, the woman he had devoted his life and fortune to, betray him in such a manner? As he paced the study, his mind raced with 1,000 questions. Who was this Julian Pierce, and how long had this sordid affair been going on? The extravagant gifts, the furtive glances, it all made sense now. Tessa's lavish lifestyle and insatiable desire for luxury had blinded him to the truth. Griffin needed answers, concrete evidence to confront her with. The mere thought of Tessa lying to his face, denying her infidelity, filled him with a fury he had never known before. He would not be made a fool. It was then that Griffin remembered Avery, an old friend from college who had made a name for himself in the world of cybersecurity and surveillance. If anyone could help uncover the truth, it was him. Griffin wasted no time in reaching out to Avery, arranging a clandestine meeting at a discreet location. As he laid out the situation, Avery's expression remained impassive, but Griffin could see the gears turning in his mind. "Leave it to me," Avery assured him, his voice laced with confidence. "I'll need access to her accounts, passwords, and anything else that might be relevant." Without hesitation, Griffin provided Avery with everything he required: Tessa's social media logins, email passwords, and even her phone records. Nothing was off-limits in his quest for the truth. Over the next few weeks, Avery worked tirelessly, employing cutting-edge surveillance techniques to monitor Tessa's every move. He installed hidden cameras throughout the Aldrich home, tracking her movements and interactions with surgical precision. As the evidence piled up, damning photos, intimate conversations, and financial records, the magnitude of Tessa's betrayal became impossible to ignore. The diamond necklace, the lavish gifts, the clandestine meetings with Julian. It was all there, laid bare before Griffin's eyes. The day Griffin confronted Tessa, he felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. The rage and hurt had given way to a steely resolve, a determination to see justice served. "Tessa, we need to talk," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. She turned to face him, her eyes widening as he presented the evidence: photos, recordings, and financial statements that left no room for doubt. "Griffin, I felt alone and trapped, and the hunger for attention was the reason behind my actions," her voice trembling with fear. But he had heard enough lies. "Save your excuses, Tessa. The truth is out, and there's no denying it anymore." She crumbled before him, tears streaming down her face as she confessed to her affairs, her betrayal. The woman Griffin had once loved, the one he had built an empire for, was nothing but a mirage. "I'm going to take everything from you, Tessa," he vowed, his words cutting like steel. "Not just your wealth and status, but your dignity, your reputation, everything." Her pleas for forgiveness fell on deaf ears. Griffin's mind was made up, and nothing could sway him from his course of action. With Avery's assistance, Griffin systematically dismantled Tessa's lavish lifestyle, freezing her accounts and reclaiming every gift, every luxury he had ever bestowed upon her. She was left with nothing, a mere shell of the woman she once was. But Griffin's vengeance didn't stop there. He turned his sights on Julian Pierce, the man who had so callously enabled Tessa's infidelity. Using his vast resources and connections, he orchestrated a campaign to destroy Julian's art business, his reputation, and his very livelihood. "You don't understand what you're doing, Griffin," Julian pleaded over the phone, his voice thick with desperation. "This will ruin me." "That's precisely the idea," Griffin replied, his tone icy. "You made a grave mistake when you decided to betray me, Julian. Now, you'll pay the price." Anonymous leaks about Julian's shady dealings found their way to the media, casting a dark shadow over his once esteemed name. Key clients withdrew their support one by one, and lucrative deals crumbled before his eyes. And when Vanessa, Julian's wife, learned of her husband's sordid affair, she wasted no time in filing for divorce and freezing his assets. The perfect storm of retribution was gathering, and there was no escape for either Julian or Tessa. As Griffin watched their world unravel, a sense of grim satisfaction washed over him. They had made a grave mistake in underestimating his resolve, his determination to see justice served, and now they would pay the ultimate price for their betrayal. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of turmoil and upheaval for Tessa. Her once lavish lifestyle had crumbled before her eyes, reduced to nothing more than a distant memory. Gone were the designer clothes, the opulent jewels, and the air of privilege that had once defined her existence. As she packed her belongings into cardboard boxes, Tessa couldn't help but feel a sense of hollowness within her. The spacious mansion that had been her home for so many years now felt like a gilded cage, a reminder of the life she had sacrificed for the pursuit of fleeting pleasures. "Is this everything?" the moving man asked, his voice gruff and impatient. Tessa nodded, her gaze sweeping over the bare walls and empty rooms. "Yes, that's it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The modest apartment that awaited her was a far cry from the opulence she had grown accustomed to. But as she stepped through the door, Tessa realized that this was her new reality, a life stripped bare, a consequence of her own actions. Meanwhile, Julian's world was unraveling at an equally rapid pace. His once thriving art business lay in ruins, a casualty of Griffin's relentless pursuit of vengeance. Clients fled, deals collapsed, and the once esteemed art dealer found himself drowning in a sea of financial ruin. "How could you let this happen?" Julian raged, his fist slamming against the desk as he confronted Tessa in her new, humble abode. Tessa flinched, her eyes downcast, unable to meet his furious gaze. "I'm sorry, Julian, I never meant for any of this to happen," Julian scoffed, his lips curled into a bitter sneer. "Your apologies mean nothing now, Tessa. We're both ruined, and it's all because of your selfishness." The words hung heavy in the air, a harsh truth that neither of them could deny. The once glamorous life they had shared was now a distant memory, replaced by regret and bitterness. As the weeks turned into months, Tessa found herself increasingly ostracized from her former social circles. The friends who had once envied her now pitted her, their gazes filled with a mixture of scorn and pity. Loneliness became her constant companion, a bitter reminder of the price she had paid for her indiscretions. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Tessa found herself standing on the doorstep of Griffin's mansion. Beside her stood Julian, his once dashing appearance now marred by the weight of their shared misfortune. "Griffin," Tessa began, her voice trembling with emotion, "I know we've wronged you in the worst possible way, but I'm begging you, please find it in your heart to forgive us." Griffin's steely gaze met hers, his expression unreadable. "Forgiveness?" he scoffed. "After what you've done, you have the audacity to ask for forgiveness?" Julian stepped forward, his eyes pleading. "We've made mistakes, Griffin, grave mistakes, but we're willing to do whatever it takes to make amends." For a moment, silence hung in the air, thick and oppressive. Then, Griffin reached into his jacket pocket and produced a crisp envelope. "These are divorce papers, Tessa," he said, his voice cold and resolute. "Our marriage is over, and there's no going back." Tessa's heart sank as she accepted the envelope, her fingers trembling. Griffin then turned to Julian, his gaze hardening. "And you, Julian, you're just as alone as Tessa now." Julian's face paled, his eyes widening in shock. With a curt nod, Griffin stepped back, his expression unyielding. "You've both made your choices, and now you must live with the consequences." As Tessa and Julian turned to leave, their shoulders slumped in defeat, Griffin watched them go. For a fleeting moment, he felt a sense of satisfaction, a belief that justice had been served. But as he closed the door, shutting out the world that had once betrayed him, a lingering doubt gnawed at his mind. Had his pursuit of vengeance truly brought him the freedom he had sought, or had it merely trapped him in a new kind of prison, one forged from the chains of bitterness and regret? Only time would tell. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.